UA in English is on air. We broadcast from the heart of Europe. It's Ukraine. My name is Anna Nichenko. Hello. And today, the 28th day of Russian occupation, Russian invasion of Ukraine. As our president Volodymyr Zelensky said, we will work, we will fight in any way we can till the end, bravely and openly. Let's listen.
Вільні народи вільної країни. Сьогодні був один із тих днів, які дозволяють впевнено говорити, що з нами увесь світ. Вранці говорив з його святістю Папою Франциском про пошук миру для України, для нашої держави, про звірства окупантів, про гуманітарні коридори до оточених міст. Подякував його святості за чітку і сильну позицію проти війни і за молитви за Україну. Запросив відвідати нашу державу у цей найвідповідальніший час. Вірю, що зможемо організувати цей важливий візит, який однозначно підтримує кожного з нас, кожного з українців. Звернувся сьогодні до обох палат італійського парламенту. Відчув максимальну підтримку, щире тепло у словах, закликав Італію посилити санкції проти Росії, проти їх режиму і міцно вдарити по всім російським діячам, які відповідальні за цю війну, за війну проти нас. По їх нерухомості, по їхніх рахунках і яхтам тощо, по їхніх звичці заробляти війною, а жити і відпочивати подалі, в Європі, де мирно і затишно. Впевнений, нові санкції будуть вже цього тижня. І вдячний Італії за підтримку членства України в ЄС. Говорив з президенткою Словаччини Зузаною Чапутовою про нашу співпрацю та про нашу безпеку, про розвиток України з усіма разом в Європейському Союзі. Важлива розмова відбулася з прем'єр-міністром Канади. Продовжуємо координувати позиції напередодні самітів НАТО і Великої Сімки, які відбудуться вже цього тижня. Джастін Трюдо підтримає нас.
I'll give you some official information. 121 children were killed in this war, in this Russian occupation of Ukraine. That's all what you must know about real picture of Ukraine now. Also give you some information about this day, how it lasted, how it was. Let's watch our video material.
A large fire broke out overnight in Trostanet, Sumy region. Due to continuing artillery shelling and street battles, it could not be extinguished. The head of the Sumy Regional Military Administration, Dmytro Zhivitsky, urged residents to close their windows and not to leave their shelters. It is dangerous to be outside, the occupiers are shooting people.
Розстріляли жінку, яка просто пересувалась містом.
A woman who was just riding her bicycle through the city was shot. They don't allow the dead to be buried. There is a very big problem with preserving the bodies of the dead and deceased in the morgue. We are also told today that women are given birth right at home, since there is no way to get to the hospital. The hospital has been shelled many times.
Shelling also continues in Rubizhne in Luhansk region. A Russian shell hit a multi-story building the night before. 2 children and 1 adult were killed. There were also fires at a light industry enterprise and a school. A gas pipeline was damaged. Meanwhile, in the town of Pavlograd-Dnipropetrovsk region, the consequences of yesterday's missile strikes continue to be eliminated. As a result of the shelling, the Pavlograd 2 railway station was destroyed. The railroad track was also destroyed. 15 cargo carriages derailed.
At the moment, train traffic through Pavlograd 2 is suspended indefinitely. There is also 1 victim. The State Emergency Service of Ukraine and the railroad maintenance crew are working at the site now.
In the town of Lozova-Kharkiv region, the aftermath of the shelling is also still being eliminated. Russian troops launched 4 missile strikes on industrial enterprises located there the day before. They also destroyed about 20 residential buildings.
Everything is destroyed, the whole private sector.
The occupiers looted and destroyed a new central analytical laboratory in Chernobyl costing 6 million euros. The Ukrainian State Agency for Exclusion Zone Management reported that high-activity samples and radionuclide samples were stored there. They are in the hands of Russians now. Meanwhile, Russia has withdrawn most of its helicopters from the airfield in Chernobyevka, Kherson region, which is of strategic importance. This was reported by the New York Times, citing satellite images. Journalists suggest this may indicate the failure of the Russian army's offensive in this direction, where it has already lost a lot of equipment after 8 strikes by Ukrainian defenders.
Our guest join us online. It's Igor Burakovsky, head of the board, the Institute of Economic Research and Policy Consultant, Doctor of Economic Science. Hello.
Hello.
My question is connected with the words of our president. He said that one of the consequences of the Ukrainian-Russian war will be a hunger in different countries. He said this speaking on video to the Italian parliament. And also we had information from United Nations Secretary. He said that this war in Ukraine could cause a hurricane of hunger around the world. What do you think about the consequences for different countries, consequences of this war in Ukraine?
Well, it's a rather difficult question because the consequences are of different nature, and every country has been already meeting different war challenges. First of all, let's talk about the challenge of Ukrainian refugees, and definitely for a number of countries, thousands of Ukrainians moving to safer destinations is a very big humanitarian and financial burden. So let's be frank, helping Ukrainians costs money, and definitely for a number of economies is quite a challenge. You rightly stressed that it will have some global economic consequences. First of all, because Ukraine is among the top 10 producers of wheat, different types of grain, and supplies this grain to the world market. Well, the same practically refers to Russia. So if we are unable to plant and to conduct all the necessary agricultural works right now, definitely Ukraine won't be able simply to export as many wheat, as many grain as it usually does. And for the world, it would mean quite a significant disruption of agricultural trade, practically for all the countries. And point number three, let's talk frankly that a sanctions regime has also costs for the countries who are imposing the sanctions. Definitely from the point of view of humanity, from the point of view of the necessity to stop the war, we need to sacrifice something. But again, actually, the economic implications of sanctions for the countries imposing sanctions are also quite significant, and definitely there to be taken by the local politicians. And one more issue which is very important, that of course right now the war makes the countries to make quite difficult choices. For example, if we are going to reduce the consumption of Russian oil and Russian gas, definitely it needs, in order to do it, we need to replace it somehow. Either replace from other sources or simply actually to move as fast as possible to the so-called green energy and to reducing the use of fossil energy resources. So as such, we see that from one side, we are losing, and every war means economic losses. That's obvious. But from the other side, it also accelerates some changes, some structural changes in the economic development, which won't take maybe many years without the war.
And also, Igor, about consequences, even in Afghanistan, now people feel them. Let's watch small video and then continue our communication.
A World Food Programme official is worried that the war in Ukraine will further increase food and fuel prices in Afghanistan, where 95% of Afghans already cannot afford enough to eat properly. In an interview Friday, Shelley Takral, spokeswoman for the World Food Programme, told the Associated Press that the food prices in Afghanistan are already up 40% and there are significant dangers of further increases.
The worrying thing, I think, and this includes Afghanistan as well as all the other hunger spots across the world, is the rise in food and fuel prices. And that's something that we were already at an all-time high in February this year, according to FAO statistics. And this I think is what we're going to have to monitor as the days and the weeks of the conflict in Ukraine goes on.
Already this year, the World Food Programme has spent $1 billion feeding millions of Afghans, but needs another $1.6 billion. And Takral said donor countries will have to dig deeper as the crisis in Ukraine deepens. While much of Afghanistan's wheat supplies come from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, Takral said the increase in food and fuel costs as a result of the war in Ukraine could add as much as 10 to 20% to the cost of providing humanitarian assistance.
Unfortunately, conflicts exacerbate hunger with the migration, and just people leaving, and you've heard the stories of people just leaving with very little. Their cash is, their cash needs to transfer into a currency that they can use wherever they are. So, but right now in Afghanistan, what we need to sustain is, the attention on the people here.
In the markets in Kabul, there is food, but on Friday, Masihullah, who runs a small stall, said no one has money. A sack of flour costs nearly $28, a near impossible price for the few who still have work. Most Afghans are now below the poverty level, which means they earn $1 and $9 a day or less. But most people don't have jobs, Masihullah said.
If the countries we import from face a challenge, we face a challenge. Now there is war between Russia and Ukraine, so we are affected. Our economy has fallen and even getting worse. The prices of food are getting higher day by day. There is a high increase in rates of oil and wheat, and there is huge difference in prices.
The grim statistics keep on coming. Takral said 80% of Afghans are in debt because they have had to borrow to pay for food or medicine. 100% of women-led households do not have enough food, and even working Afghans look to the World Food Programme for food because they don't make enough to be able to afford the food in the market.
Igor, what can you say about such countries as Afghanistan and also such European countries as Italy, Germany, and by the way, the United States seem to be facing a food crisis. The Washington Post writes that rising food prices across the country are pushing more and more Americans to turn to food banks.
Well, in your questions, actually, there are two problems which are to be addressed. Point number one, if we cast a glance back before the war, so at that particular time, we see already, the price increases all over the world. There is a number of economic explanations, and I'm not going to actually elaborate on this point. So actually, we met the war when the food prices were rising all over the world. This is point number one, and unfortunately, this situation hasn't changed very much. Point number two, that's about humanitarian support. If we look, for example, at different humanitarian agencies, how they are operating, so definitely, they need, first of all, money. They need money, they need logistics, they need actually opportunities where to buy the necessary foodstuffs, the necessary staples, to provide the people in need. And right now, actually, when Ukrainian catastrophe, better say, added to the humanitarian problems of the world, right now, these organizations are facing quite a tough choice. What to do? Either to reduce or how to better say, to reorient the humanitarian assistance, for example, from Afghanistan, to say to Ukraine, from other countries actually, to help Ukrainians take into account the current situation. And definitely, this is a very tough moral, political, and economic choice. So, my point is quite simple, that, the more hot beds of hostilities we have on the map of the world, the more problems the world will meet in terms of securing foodstuffs and solving humanitarian problems. And again, actually coming back to our initial point of the discussion, if Ukraine is not able, for example, to serve the international markets as it traditionally does, so definitely, there would be a shortage of the opportunities to buy some wheat, to buy some grains, to buy some foodstuffs for humanitarian purposes by the organizations, by the institutions we already mentioned.
And what about Russian economy? Because there are lots of sanctions, and also the United States is considering the possibility of blocking Russia's gold reserves.
Well, definitely, actually, the sanctions repercussions for Ukrainian economy are quite significant. But the problem with the sanction is that actually, at the moment, the sanctions are not given a kind of immediate effect. So, unfortunately for Ukraine and unfortunately for a number of people, we need to wait for a certain period of time. And if actually, we take into account what sanctions have been already applied, and if we consider that these sanctions won't be lifted, for example, in the nearest future and would sustain, in the medium term, I think that by the end of the year, Russia will meet with a full-size economic crisis. Right now, actually, we see only the first, so to speak, signals of economic difficulties. But of course, actually, we need to take into account the political regime in Russia. So, a number of economic troubles, a number of economic problems won't be, so to say, put on the shoulders of the ordinary people, while Russian oligarchs, while regime, the friends of the regime would get some compensatory mechanisms in order to survive the storm. But in the medium and long run, definitely, actually, the inability of Russia to enjoy the opportunities of international division of labor, to enjoy the opportunities of the international cooperation in financial field, in trade field, in scientific and research field, will not only hamper the development of Russian economy, but also actually will put it back maybe to the times of 90s or even earlier.
What do you think about existing logistical problems with the transportation of grain, food like this? And we know lots of information about that the Poland-Belarus border activists have been blocking the trucks heading to Russia for 3 days, for almost 4 days, and there are trucks that they stay for 50 kilometers long. It's also a problem. It's also a problem for Russia. Just some words about this.
Yeah, of course, actually, when it comes, to sanctions, definitely we need to discriminate between, so to say, official political sanctions and the sanctions which are imposed, let's call them actually, people sanctions, right? Yeah, grassroots sanctions. And of course, from the point of view of a Ukrainian who is living under actually the siege right now, under the war, I would welcome all the efforts in order to block economic relations between the Western countries and between the West and Russia. The Russia should be economically punished for what it's done. And of course, when we are talking about the sanctions, we need to understand that the sanctions are not working alone. In order to be successful in terms of stopping the war and then punishing Russia for what was done not only to Ukraine but actually for the whole world, three packages of actions are to be taken into account. One is political and diplomatic actions. One is actions, economic actions, and of course, military actions. So this is, so to say, actually, a general view. When it comes actually, to specific issues, I would like to say that, definitely, when it comes actually, to Russian, anti-Russian sanctions, it's not only, about Poland. Right now, for example, actually, Russia experiences problems generated by the sanctions in terms of, for example, air transportation. So right now, actually, there is no air transportation between Russia and other world. And of course, actually, it means not only, the problems of supplies, it means also actually, the problems of getting money from external sources. So that's about actually, currency inflow to the country. Traditionally in Russia, the external operations of Aeroflot, of other companies, were a kind of, tool to subsidize, the internal air transportation. So right now, actually, the whole system is broken, and right now, as everybody knows, actually, for example, Sheremetyevo airport, decided actually, to sack approximately, 50% of the people employed simply because there is no actually cargo, there is no passengers, to service. But there is one more problem, and actually, I'm coming back, to to the points we already raised. Right now, unfortunately, actually, well, Russia dominates in Black Sea and in Azov Sea. It creates the problems with the export of Ukrainian grain and Ukrainian, for example, well, metal products, well, to the world. Why? Because actually a substantial part of Ukrainian export goes through the ports, goes through the sea transportation channels. So that's why military deblocking of the Black Sea means, well, an opportunity for Ukraine, well, to go to external market, to sell something and actually to get the necessary currency to support Ukrainian army and Ukrainian people.
Thank you, Igor, for your explanations. I'll remind our viewers it was Igor Burakovsky, head of the board, the Institute of Economic Research and Policy Consultant, Doctor of Economic Sciences. Talking about the consequences of the war and this global crisis that can be, I'll show you one more video explanation. Ukraine is one of the largest importers of wheat and corn in the world. Do the war consequences also threaten us with a food crisis? And while the world has already begun to talk about a global wave of hunger, our correspondents know more.
About 5 million hectares of arable land in Ukraine are under temporary occupation, and this is about 40% of the loss of the future crop. But in the free territories, farmers are already preparing for the sowing season, and this year they are more motivated than ever. The Kyiv School of Economics expert assures that essential food will be available in Ukraine under any circumstances.
The alternative to buy wheat abroad is very low. We had a problem with food when the genocide took place in 1932-1933. It was completely artificial.
During the time of independence, even in the most difficult year of 2003, Ukraine collected enough wheat and was able to export some more. Now we are on the leaders in the supply of wheat in the world. Most of all, we sell to the countries of the Middle East and Africa. And if Russia continues the war, then these regions can expect famine.
Ukraine is the number 5 actually, producer and exporter of wheat. So that has a big impact. WFP buys almost half of its wheat, or has bought almost half of its wheat supplies worldwide from the Ukraine.
Something like hunger riots in the countries of buyers due to shortages of food, and even the rise in the prices of this food can be expected. There are two sides of the situation. On the one hand, physical deficiency and supply interruptions. On the other hand, this is the situation that appeared as a result of the war. It provoked quite a serious jump in prices.
Experts say that the price of grains and oilseeds will rise by 30%. Consequently, countries, mostly poor countries that buy our products, will have a food crisis. And this will provoke another problem, migration. People from the Middle East and North Africa can move to more developed countries, in particular to Europe. And this is a double migration pressure on the international community. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation into Ukraine, more than 3 million of our fellow countrymen have left the country. Reported by Olena Shustova, Victoria Ilchuk, UATV.
Every day, Ivano-Frankivsk welcomes more and more internally displaced persons from the different regions of our country. Today, the city has turned into a volunteer hub. My colleagues learned how people in Ivano-Frankivsk are being helped.
Something flew into our house. We were at home with a 7-month-old baby. A shell hit the house, I guess, and it blew the building apart. And I don't know how we survived.
Yana, with a 7-month-old daughter in her arms, arrived in Ivano-Frankivsk 5 days ago. There was no time to pack, she says. The main thing for the woman was to survive and get out of the shellings. Today she has to look for things not only for herself, but also for her baby.
The stroller was shot. The baby has nothing. We only took a small one. I don't know how we managed. And that's it. We don't have anything else with us. We are looking for a crib, some linens, because we have nothing at all. We just left and that's it.
Looking for stuff, Tatiana also came to the volunteer center. She and her family fled from Kharkiv. They now live in gymnasium.
Коли почало вже в Харкові дуже гуркотіти, то ми поїхали спочатку до Полтави.
When it started to rumble already in Kharkiv, we went first to Poltava and then by other means of transport we got to Frankivsk. We only have winter clothes, we have nothing for warmer weather, so we were told to come here. We came, here we are looking for clothes.
Only a month ago, actors in this theater were greeted with applause. And today here humanitarian aid for the temporarily displaced persons and our troops is being collected.
До нас приходить допомога з Європи, від наших власних глядачів, від людей, які не знають, від українців.
We get help from Europe, from our audience, from people, from Ukrainians who now live in Italy, Spain. When it all started, we couldn't just sit back and stay apart. We decided to do something. We have a public organization. We have the right to do volunteer work as an organization.
Тобто на правах громадської організації ми маємо право займатися волонтерською діяльністю. І от наша камерна сцена перетворилася в пункт координації надання і прийому.
The chamber stage has now turned into an aid station. We collect clothes, food, hygiene items and children's necessities here.
According to official data, more than 80,000 Ukrainians from different regions of Ukraine have moved to Ivano-Frankivsk. Many are forced to seek help from volunteers.
Завчора тільки сюди, в цей пункт, людей.
Yesterday alone, 65 displaced persons came to the station and we handed out 65 packages with hygiene products and food, not counting that we sent batches of food and medicine to the front for our guys.
Today there are at least 10 IDPs help centers of this kind in the city. Local volunteers are ready to provide any support for those who seek shelter in the city. Reported by Olena Shustova, Yulia Hranovska, Larisa Zubenko from Ivano-Frankivsk, UATV News.
And the new guest joins our program online. It's Maxim Yakovlev, Head of Department of International Relations, Kyiv Mogil Academy. Hello, Maxim.
Hello, hello.
Can you please just turn horizontally your camera for our viewers could see you good? Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes. Trying my best because I'm now connecting via phone because your people unfortunately didn't provide me with enough time to switch on my laptop, but I hope we can do it like this as well.
Your operative reaction, thank you very much. Would like to discuss with you situation connected with summits, European Union, NATO, and now we wait that tomorrow Zelensky will take part online in the NATO summit. And we had information from Joe Biden, from his administration. They said that Biden goes to Europe to keep democracy in the world. What do you think? What should we wait from this summit? What kind of results?
Well, first, there are always what we consider to be a symbolic power, and symbolic power is always extremely important. Even though we would like to, disparage all the laudable achievement of our diplomacy, but this is a wrong term. So I think it's very good that Biden visits Europe, especially under the fears of Poland, because there were kind of leaks of information yesterday that Russia threatens Poland. If Poland continues our support, meaning support of Ukraine, then they might be under attack. So I think this information can be trusted because Russia does everything possible to protract this particular war in Ukraine and to frighten our partners in Europe. Thus, any forms of summits, especially on the NATO level, which is very important, because we have to understand that NATO is an organization of a number of countries, and some of them have different positions. I'm very dissatisfied, I think, as most of the Ukrainians are, with the position of Hungary. I do hope for the upcoming elections in Hungary that might be that the Orban regime cannot hold for longer, but still there's Hungarian position. There are position of other members of NATO, like the Netherlands, for example, the Germany, who cannot say no to Russian energy resources at this particular moment. Thus, a summit or meeting of NATO states is.
We will now also once again call to our expert Maxim Yakovlev, and we'll continue this discussion because now it's really important to understand and to know what will be results of summits, of NATO summit, of European Union summit. And also we know that Joe Biden visit Europe to keep democracy in the whole world, and we will see the results. So we can talk again to our guest. Maxim, you can go on, please.
Yeah, so I would, sorry, because there was interruption of my phone, because when somebody calls, then the Skype drops. Basically, I would like to say that the support of the states is also very important, because within the NATO countries, there are also discussions if other NATO countries can be under Russia's attack. And if we listen to what Russian propaganda says, they definitely claim that other countries, not only Ukraine, can be under Russian attack and aggression, because Russian neo-imperial politics and foreign politics and stance is still always there. It has always been there and still is there. Thus, this visit is very important. Let's see if NATO countries agree on further support for Ukraine. But we have to also be very realistic that they are going to discuss their security and their guarantees. Because separate countries, like on the very second day of Russian war against Ukraine, there were discussion in all German media, for example, that Germany already lost a lot of time because they failed to invest enough money and resources in their defense. So if Germany is discussing how to increase, and Germany increases substantially the expenditure for their defense system and for their military expenses, and other countries like not NATO members like Finland or Sweden are discussing potential membership within NATO, these questions can also be discussed, of course, during this summit.
And do we have some alternative to NATO? Because one of our speakers in our program said, let's watch, it was Dmytro Krylidze, ex-Deputy Protector General of Ukraine. Let's watch and then discuss his speech.
For 23 years, the West has cultivated a monster, and there have been various attempts to negotiate with him, to run business, to run various streams, northern, southern, eastern, and so on. Until it all came to this. So we need a resource to bring Ukraine back on its feet. We will find ourselves allies, we will find enough reliable countries that will work with us and participate in collective security. I don't even doubt it.
Maxim, what do you think? You heard his words, what do you think about it?
You know, I think there is at some particular point in time, we have to drop all these discussions like, you see, we told you Russia is an enemy. We see that Putin is not reliable. We told you that you cannot negotiate with me. Yes, we did all that. Right? And I'm very, I feel pity for many of my Ukrainian colleagues who constantly repeat that Germany fall because Germany initiated Nord Stream 1, the first Nord Stream. One of my colleagues, Andreas Umland, he constantly complained and also said that if not for Nord Stream 1, maybe the annexation of Crimea and the war in Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast never took place. Who knows? But at some point we have to stop all this discussion, saying, I think that now the most of our European and not only European partners realize that there are no ways to negotiate with Putin his psychotic ideas about reviving the Soviet Union 2.0. So at some point we have to drop these discussions. What we have to say constantly that, and we see like Macron, I'm glad that you now are showing Macron with all these ideas of talking to Putin and trying to understand Putin. At some points it's very difficult to understand psychopaths. At some point, if a person is really in some form of delusion, what you have to do is to be protected against his delusional initiatives. Thus, we need to, as I said, diplomacy doesn't work like you go and say, you see, we told you, and you didn't react. We have to stress what we have in common now with our European partners, and that is fear for Russian aggression and escalation of that aggression. And then we have to react to that.
Now the whole world understands that Russia is an aggressor, but at the same time, sanctions not maybe so strict, I don't know, sanctions, they work, but they don't help to stop the war. On the other hand, the number of European countries that support us also increases, and we have this support. And talking about NATO, also one of the speakers online in our program said that NATO countries have done nothing for us, but it is much less, have done lots for us, but it's much less than we expected. Let's watch this small part of the interview.
When people in the West saw that this is not just some abstract aggression, but a real war with the destruction of cities, with people being killed, support started to be concrete. Very serious sanctions against Russia have been imposed, destroying its economy. Support started being provided by countries that have never helped us with weapons. Weapons deliveries have been started. So the forms of support for Ukraine are diverse, and they lead to different results, from attempts to find a peaceful solution to efforts of supporting Ukraine so that it can withstand Russian aggression and defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity.
So from the one hand, NATO did something. From the other hand, not enough. What do you think NATO should do? Close the sky? What maximum it can do?
Every time we complain about NATO European countries not providing enough help for us, we support Russian propaganda. And everybody who says that that NATO didn't support us enough, and now they're supporting us not enough, and we need more support and things like that, we also help Russian propaganda to put forward the main message of Russian propaganda that Ukraine is not in NATO, Europe, and so on and so forth interests. This is wrong. The sanctions that Russia is facing now, they are unprecedented. Nothing like that ever happened in human history. Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world. And nobody expected sanctions but by that scale. Even the Russians, they're complaining that they were not ready. They are acknowledging that they were not ready for that scale of sanctions. Of course, we need more support and we have to push for more support. But I would really encourage all my colleagues and everybody who is watching us, especially on social media, because this is also there is a whole war going in social media, to start complaining, at least in that sort of messages that NATO, they're not providing us with enough help. We need to push, we need to be grateful for a great amount of sanctions that NATO countries and European Union and many other countries imposed on Russia. We have to be grateful for that, and we have to be very cautious, but by complaining that we didn't get enough support, some sort. Because as I repeat, that would be in support of Russian propaganda. And we as Ukrainians should do everything not to support Russian propaganda.
I see. And talking about Europe and talking about, I don't know, all the countries, what kind of steps we should wait now, next steps?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer your question about all the European countries. This is impossible. We have to talk about separate countries, and the next steps that are now being discussed, as we know, is the independence of European countries from Russian gas and oil, definitely, especially gas deliveries and all the energy security. So the topic of European countries' energy security, because I mentioned already Hungary. So the Hungary explains that they would put a veto on any initiative of the European Union on Russian energy sources, because this is, I quote, the question of Hungary in energy security. They put it as an energy security. So energy security and dependence on Russian gas would be a topic. So definitely on the Russian energy resources as such. Then any form of embargo. This is also discussed, if to block Russia completely. And we have to understand that there are sanctions on the countries and the organization of countries level, but there are also sanctions on the level of separate companies, because nobody expected that McDonald's would quit Russia and leave Russia, and many other companies. So more pressure by the public in different European countries, like Nestlé is a topic that is discussed, and the position of this company is being discussed actively lately. So to answer your question briefly, we cannot speak about all the European Union because separate countries. But energy dependency on Russia is definitely a topic of discussion. More pressure on separate companies that still are hesitant to leave Russia, and maybe the full blockade of Russia in terms of embargo, a different source, and trade and communication with Russia. That would also be a topic.
Thank you, Maxim, for your thoughts, for your explanations. I'll remind our viewers it was Maxim Yakovlev, Head of Department of International Relations, Kyiv Mohyla Academy. And now it's high time Europe realized that the war against Ukraine is just a start of a big expansion and destruction campaign by Russia, wrote Mikhail Podolyak, advisor to the head of the President's Office of Ukraine. And also Vladimir Zelensky talked with the Pope Francisco. He said he spoke with Pope Francisco and he told His Holiness about the difficult humanitarian situation and the blocking of rescue corridors by Russian troops. So communication in the world is going on, and our President Zelensky really talks a lot to different countries and their leaders. What now say our advisors on Bankova? Let's watch.
Шановні панове спікери, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре Драгі, шановні пані та панове сенатори, депутати, Дорогий італійський народи, сьогодні вранці я говорив з його святістю Папою Франциском, і він сказав дуже важливі слова. Розумію, що ви хочете миру, розумію, що ви маєте себе захищати, і військові захищають, і цивільні люди мужньо боронять батьківщину. Кожен захищає батьківщину. І я на це відповів: наш народ став цим військом. Став цим військом, коли побачив, яку біду несе ворог, яке спустошення він залишає по собі. І скільки крові хоче пролити, коли трохи більше тижня тому я виступив зі зверненням до мітингу у Флоренції та ще й у десятках європейських міст, я просив усіх італійців, усіх європейців запам'ятати число 79. 79 стільки дітей було вбито в Україні на той момент, а тепер це 117. Ще 38 дітей за ці дні. Така ціна зволікання із тиском на Росію, щоб вона припинила цю жорстоку війну. 117 дітей, тисячі дорослих, тисячі поранених, десятки тисяч зруйнованих родин, сотні тисяч зруйнованих доль, мільйони покинутих квартир, домівок. І все це почалося з однієї людини.
And also today it was the previous day, and today Zelensky addressed his speech to the Japanese parliament. He also told the real situation, what's going on now in Ukraine. Also some information from Bankova and from officials who know the real situation in Ukraine.
Доброго дня, українці. Отже, традиційний тематичний брифінг на тему...
Good day, Ukrainians. Here is a traditional thematic briefing on the topic of fakes and propaganda from the Russian aggressor. They try to achieve whatever little recognition they can to play a victim, as any reasonable state or politician do not give them such an opportunity. Because of that, Russians are employing primitive tricks and fraud. Consequently, Russian propaganda tries to receive sympathy in the eyes of Europeans. I have already talked about how they invented the fake of a crucified boy killed in Germany by Ukrainian nationalists, told about the arson of a school in Berlin, or rather its gym, allegedly by Ukrainians, that was defalsified by German police. And now there is one even more creative. Communist Party of Britain. I was greatly surprised when I found out that there is one. Probably this is news for you too. It tweeted urging not to target Russians for their attack on Ukraine. Communist Party of Britain. Sounds like a joke, but such an organization is registered in a country, except it is most fringe of fringe parties. Think for a bit. The number of party members is 1,500. They did not participate in last elections, nor the ones before that. And in the elections of 2015, they got 1,229 votes in the entire Great Britain. In the elections of 2010, 927 in all of UK. Just to give an idea of the electoral base. But for Russian propaganda, this does not matter. Communist Party of Britain condemned attack on Russians in Europe. This message was inserted in Russian propagandistic media, while Russians are unaware of the real numbers of the British communists. And in Telegram channels with 1 million, 1.5 million subscribers, this message is being hammered in by the aggressor state. Moving forward, another method of gathering sympathy for Russia is the use of rallies for the support of Russia. Seeing that the world supports Ukraine, that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions gathering for the support of Ukraine in Europe and America, they use their puppet states. So, the rally for the support of Russia has been held where else but in Syria, as reported by propaganda media Russia Today. The rally has gathered few thousand people. Russia Today also reports on a rally in Kyrgyzstan. The members of a rally took to the streets holding Russian flags and signs that read "No to hatred and hostility, we're against fakes, the world without Nazism." This is the image that is being crafted for Russians. They are being fed with such shoddily made fakes by propagandists. And another fake spreader, already an ex-member of Ukraine Parliament Ilya Kiva, that has lost his MP mandate, and with the help of Russian propaganda media of RIA News, which is a state-owned media as a Russia Today, he informs that allegedly in 2-3 weeks Ukrainian nationalists are planning a coup d'etat with Vitaly Klitschko at the helm. For Ukrainians this sounds as a joke, but for Russians, another reason to think that Ukraine is hijacked by Nazis. I want to remind that before that Ilya Kiva said that President Zelensky has fled the country and was in fact in Romania, and only his broadcasts were recorded using green screen and so forth. He lies constantly. It is being actively reposted by Russian propaganda machine created by Russian state, and Russians are consuming these fakes, believing this human, if you can call him that. The last fake that we will discuss is alleged connection of Ukraine to a mass shooting in Kazan. School shooting, to be precise. They report that this too was caused by Ukrainians. One can only advise Russians to solve their internal problems without dragging Ukrainians in it. And to Ukrainians to keep critical thinking, to trust official media, to not trust Russia fake spreaders, to trust Ukrainian army, Ukrainian political leadership. To international audience that watches this briefing in translation, and we are thankful for that, it is being broadcasted on international platforms, to as well think critically and to not trust Russian fakes and believe Ukraine, and all will be well. Glory to Ukraine.
While we protect our land in our country, in Ukraine, Russian army loses. Losses of Russian army is more than 15,300 people. It's military people that came here with war in our land, and that's why Ukrainian army had to protect. Meanwhile, what is really going on in Russian army? Let's watch our video material.
The 28th day of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, the losses of the enemy army are colossal. According to official data alone, Putin's troops have lost more than 15,000 soldiers, more than 500 tanks, 1,500 armored vehicles, 99 aircrafts, and more than 120 helicopters. From the conversations intercepted by the Ukrainian security service, it is clear that the enemy is completely demotivated and weak in spirit.
We have good news.
Which one? Will you make me happy?
No, the good news is that you will be less worried. We're going back.
This is why mobilization is now taking place in 8 federal districts of Russia, but it is taking place quietly, almost clandestinely.
They don't write anywhere about it, but the military registration and enlistment offices throughout their own departments, even the Russian Guard, deliver summons.
The Kremlin public relations specialists of the bloody war in Ukraine have come up with a completely new advertising move. Now the information about service in the so-called Second Army of the world is placed in the utility bills. Russia also began to recruit contract servicemen through the Avito classifieds website. The first sentence after the word service, the marketplace offers vacancies for military service under contract. Salaries are promised from 20,000 rubles to 140,000. At a new exchange rate of the ruble, this is from 190 to $1,300. This is how much Russia values the lives of the people it sends to their certain deaths in Ukraine. According to military expert Oleg Zhdanov, new mobilized to the Russian army should be expected in Ukraine in at least a month.
It is difficult to say how many they will mobilize, but I think that the Russian government plans to mobilize about 30 to 40,000.
However, this is not the end of the hypocrisy. When the conscripts ran out, Russia already began sending cadets from military schools to fight in Ukraine. The Ukrainian armed forces received documents that refute the so-called fairy tales of the Russian Ministry of Defense and Putin. Young men who have not even graduated from military schools are fighting and dying in Ukraine. According to Ukraine organization in the war with Ukraine, this is a kind of modern Russian Hitler Youth organization which is distinguished by its radical propaganda work amongst young people and children. Children from the age of 8 become members of the organization. The junior army also operates in areas temporarily occupied by Russia in the Luhansk and Donetsk regions and in Crimea. There, even before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the occupation authorities conducted a mobilization there. Now the Russian occupants continue their forced mobilization in certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
Thus, according to the available information, the budgetary organization of Stanitsa Luhanska village community are notified of the need for male employees aged 18 to 60 to come to the local police department for registration on April 1st, 2022. The reasons for such registration are not explained, although it is related to the next wave of mobilization in the 2nd Army Corps to be sent to the areas of combat operations, General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports. Of course they have no right. They are citizens of Ukraine, even though they are passported.
Men in certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions are afraid to simply go out in the street. After all, the occupation gendarmerie might catch them there.
In this case, if a person wants to avoid mobilization, it is necessary to say that he is very ill and make a fake certificate.
They also raised the draft age from 55 to 65. Now old people are also sent to their deaths in Ukraine, like this 60-year-old man.
I am Georgy Yurovich, born in 1967, a native of the city of Makeyevka.
However, Russia is still unable to break the desire of Donetsk residents to return home to Ukraine. On the popular social media platform TikTok, residents of certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions are already making videos in support of Ukraine and Ukrainian servicemen. Reported by Pavlo Steinmach, Anastasia Zhuk, UATV News.
And also some information for people who love animals. In the village of Gostomel, Kiev region, the Russian occupiers destroyed the Alexandria stable together with the horses. Most of the 32 animals were burnt alive. Is it a military object? That's how the information. Meanwhile, at the same time, people in Ukraine don't give up. They help each other. Let's watch the ways of this help.
The war in Ukraine forced the whole business industry to work in a new reality. Thus, one of the largest logistics companies has switched to a military footing and delivers hundreds of humanitarian goods for the civilian population, the Ukrainian army and the defense units.
90% of customers today take goods from warehouses for humanitarian aid to the armed forces of Ukraine. Therefore, everything we do is within the framework of martial law. Accordingly, this is not a commercial activity. We do not take money for this. 3 or 4 days ago, we started calling drivers and warehouse workers. Who has the opportunity to start going to work? The economy must work.
Humanitarian aid from other countries is also being delivered. In Kazakhstan, the company in its warehouses, together with local public organizations, formed the Center of Assistance to Ukraine. Medicines, food, goods for children and money are transferred there.
24 containers have already been delivered. From there, we are Poland. Also, people in Kazakhstan bring money. There are about €500,000, which were also transferred to the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. You know, not only Ukrainians, but also Kazakhstan people help and bring everything that they can, including humanitarian aid.
Many Ukrainian cafes and restaurants have now turned into field kitchens. The owners, together with the team, prepare food for free for the defense units, the Ukrainian army and civilians. Even the world-famous catering establishments distribute everything for the need of Ukrainians. By the way, the KFC opened kitchens to cook for Ukrainian defenders. Ukrainian designers and brands are now sewing fleece balaclavas, thermal underwear, body armor and berets instead of fashion outfits for free. They take money from those who are not indifferent and only to purchase the materials. Every Ukrainian business is forced to rebuild in order not to lose income, save jobs and raise the country's economy. During martial law, the government created a special package of assistance to businesses and employees. The state has also already implemented a business evacuation program, which allows owners to move their businesses out of the war zone. Reported by Marina Stepanenko, Vlada Tsurkan, UATV News.
Today in Chernihiv, occupiers destroyed a road bridge across the Desna River. This bridge connected connected city Chernihiv and Kiev. And during these days, it's really hot situation in Chernihiv, and 47 people were killed only in one house, civils. These were civil people. Lots of problems connected with there is no water, there is no light, and people survive. You can now see this video. People survive as they can, and really lots of people, civil people, were dead. And the murders, I don't know how to call another way, Russian military that came with war on our land and which gave up. Let's watch what they say about their war in Ukraine.
О, привет!
Как дела?
Я хочу сходить в военкомат или в часть свою и сказать, что я одна осталась, мне твоя помощь нужна, и чтоб тебя вернуть.
Не вернут. Тут люди, которые отказывались, им по 8 лет срока дали уже.
Да ты чё?
У нас 120 человек отправили обратно в бригаду в госпиталь с ранениями. У нас около, вот смотри, 120 человек раненых и 350 человек 200-й груз.
Не надо. Живи, мой миленький.
Наша бригада не боеготовна уже. Нам, в смысле, на нас сейчас нападут, нас всех повалят, и все. У нас нет даже, у нас ни танков нету, ничего не осталось. Все украинцы поподрывали минометами. Ты знаешь, что мы хотели сделать? Я тебе так по секрету скажу. Мы хотели патроны найти 7,62 украинские, короче. Друг другу ноги попрострелить и вернуться в госпиталь сюда, в Буденновск. Отвозят. Так пацаны делали. Мы хотели друг другу ноги тупо пострелить, чтобы нас завинтовали, и нас отправили в госпиталь. Дай бог дожить до этого.
Дай бог, сынулечка, миленький.
So that's what occupiers say to their mothers, real situation. We try to show you the whole picture of what's going on now in Ukraine. That's why we show you different cities. Some cities like Chernihiv suffered a lot. Some cities in different ways. Also now material from Ternopil city. Let's watch.
From the first day of the war, teachers from the Ternopil Institution of Services and Tourism have been accepting orders for the territorial defense for making ammunition. They say there are no students, but there are capacities to help the army. Only in one day, about 300-400 of bags for medicines are produced. In addition, pouches, nets for helmets, bags for cartridges are sewn.
Here is a florist who doesn't know this production at all, but she sits and sews. I'm a teacher, but I must do it for the sake of our country, with great hope, faith, and support of our warriors. Everyone making a handbag says, this will help someone, this will save someone's life.
12-year-old Larissa's granddaughter also helps.
I cut off the rubber bands on the bags so that they can be tightened and the medicines do not fall out.
Graduates are also involved to help. For example, Volodymyra graduated 15 years ago. Now she works as a junior nurse in a maternity hospital, and on weekends, she says, she sews for the military of the armed forces of Ukraine.
I have a sewing machine at home, so I have not forgotten how to work.
In addition to production, internally displaced persons from Kharkiv, Kherson and Kyiv region were accommodated in students' dormitories of the school. People try to help. For example, Ludmila, who was forced to live with 2 children from the Vyshgorod district of the Kyiv region.
I'm an accountant by profession, but I help in any way I can. When you spend the whole day in work, your thoughts are immersed and you don't think about events in your city.
Ludmila's daughter Vera also helps.
I put the fabric in a bag, wrap it up, and then it is the bag.
One of the organizers of this volunteering is Ludmila, a teacher from an ordinary Ternopil school. She says that she was inspired by her military husband. He served in the Donbass for 6 years, but got the 2nd disability group. Unfortunately, he can't serve in the front. Therefore, he advises his wife how to sew this or that thing for the Ukrainian soldier more correctly, more logically.
This is a pouch for Kalashnikov assault rifle magazines. We made different divisions. They are sewed according to the American model. There were no patterns, nothing, just drew drawings. There is a need for covers for helmets. They are different, but thanks to the masters of the school, everything is done.
According to volunteers, the production is non-waste. They send the remnants of the fabric to nets that are woven in almost every school in Chernobyl. Teachers are sure that they will increase the number of people and take even more serious orders. Reported by Marina Stepanenko, Julia Bezborodko, UATV News.
So say goodbye, see you tomorrow. It was UA in English, Anna Nichenka. See you.